Okay. So hello everyone. Hi Alex. Welcome to the 0 to 167th episode. I am Sneha from Doer Circle and I'll be hosting today's session. For those of you joining for the first time, 0 to 1 is a weekly series where we invite founders, freelancers, independent doers to share their experience, their knowledge, their lessons, what they have learned throughout their professional journey. And today's topic is something that every founder think about, and that is fundraising, right? From building a pitch deck to talking with investors and finally getting that term sheet, there is a process involved and it becomes really confusing and overwhelming at times. So today's session will throw light upon that and we'll be able to understand what exactly goes through or what exactly happens during this process. And to talk us through this, we have Alex with us today. Alex works closely with a lot of startups at Notion and has also worked in venture capital. So he has great amount of insight into how fundraising actually works. And I'm sure all the founders out here will be able to take some learnings and it'll be useful for them. So Alex, over to you. The stage is all yours now. I will stop sharing and you can begin. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time. I'm just going to share my screens as to get one of our slides up. There we are. Perfect. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. So again, thank you very much for having me, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about something I guess near and dear to my heart, which is from pitch deck to term sheet, something that I've experienced when I was a VC and something that I see on a day-to-day basis when I speak with founders in my current role at Notion. So a little bit about me. If you can't tell by the accent, my name is Alex and I am born and raised in New Zealand. I still live in New Zealand to this day, but my role now really spans across Asia Pacific. So I was a VC for 3.5 years in New Zealand, where I was a principal investing across Australia and New Zealand startups. We invested in 26 companies in total from a $36 million fund. That's New Zealand dollars, so around 20 million US. And I also took part in the actual fundraising or capital raise of that fund itself. So, in terms of actually raising capital, I have some experience raising funds for our fund itself. And nowadays, I have moved into a role as an operator in Notion, where I lead all of the growth marketing and partnership efforts in regards to our startup program that we have, where it's all about acquiring new startups to the top of our funnel so that they can later become bigger companies and then be larger paid users for Notion. So today's content is really around my bread and butter, which is around fundraising without the busy work. And really, I wanted to give you guys a tactical walkthrough as how to move through the investor fundraising process, all the way from initially reaching out to these investors to actually building momentum throughout the fundraising process to actually closing them as investors. So today, in one line, it's really system plus momentum beats hustle. And I can touch on this later on. Some disclaimers, of course. Everything that I tell or teach you today, none of this actually matters if you haven't built an amazing product and have not shown true signals that people actually want to pay for it. It's also a numbers game when it comes to raising capital. And it doesn't work if you don't put in the work yourself to actually do the research on the investors that you're talking to, but also setting up the fundraising system for your own success. A little bit of an agenda today. Let me zoom in for you guys so you can have a better look at this, where I'm going to go through a walkthrough around the game of fundraising, investor outreach and templates and copy, including a fundraising command center or a CRM so that you can track all of your investor conversations. some data room essentials. So what do you actually include in your data room and what's not needed? Around some, I'm also going to touch on mechanics around building the momentum in your capital raise. And then finally, I'm actually going to showcase plus give you some of these templates that I've co-created for you in Notion, but we can actually build the templates live for you at the end. At the end, I'm also going to leave some time and room for Q&A just in case someone has any questions. So how do we use this session? You don't need your laptop. This is more of a guided walkthrough. I'm just going to be talking at you, but at the end, I'm going to be showcasing some of these templates that you can use and download for yourself. So a quick plug for our startups program at Notion. We have a partnership with Do a Circle where you can get up to 6 months of Notion's business plan for free, plus our newest product, custom agents. So you just click that link below and it will take you to the sign up form. However, I will also be sharing this entire slide deck and page for you at the end. All right, so let's talk about this first. There we are. This first topic around investor outreach that really converts. And the goal, really, when you reach out to investors, is to get that first meeting. Nothing else matters other than getting that first meeting. And then once you get that first meeting and you have that first meeting, the goal thereafter that is getting the second meeting. So in your outreach, usually it's in an email, or maybe it's a LinkedIn message, or maybe you're hitting them from different channels at the same time. So LinkedIn, email, and maybe a WhatsApp message, or maybe it's a referral from someone that knows that investor. But I like to structure it as this almost 4-line structure where the first line of your email is just, what do you do? The second line or bullet point is immediate traction metrics. So what have you done? Any insight that you have? Something that's like a hook that hooks the investor in to want to read more of your email or your message. Number 3 is why this investor. I think investors, and as someone who used to be an investor, we used to get bombarded with messages all the time. And a lot of them were not really thoroughly researched. And you could tell by that email that someone had just spammed you, but also spammed everyone else the same message. They didn't critically look into the investor and understand whether that investor is actually right for them. So having a why this investor line is super important because investors invest at different stages. They focus on different industries. And so you want to tell the investor that you've done research on them so that they're the perfect fit for you to invest in the right stage of your company. But then the last line of that email or that message is always an ask. Whether you're asking for a meeting with them, you're asking them for their time, whatever it is, there should always be an ask at the end so that it's very clear what you're after from them. So if we go down to the page, I've just kind of set a follow-up sequence for you guys. So for example, you've sent that first email to the investor. Then maybe day two or day 3, you do like a bump. A bump is literally just a follow-up email to them plus one new proof point. So an interesting thing that you can do to gauge investor interest or to get investors interested is not actually give them everything in that one email. You can give them in that, if we go back to the second line here, the proof or the traction metrics, maybe give them the highest level or one of the most important traction metrics that you have. And then in your day 2 bump, when you're following up and sending them a follow-up email, you add another proof point to that email so that it's giving them something, another reason for them to be interested in replying to your email. After a week, it's kind of the third round timing. You can talk about some achievement or a milestone that you've hit. And then after 2 weeks, that's when I would advise you that they're probably a time waster and they're not going to respond to your email if you've already nudged them 3-4 times via email or via LinkedIn. So there are always things that you can do to gauge investor interest, and doing this like 3 or 4 emails in this 2 week time horizon is actually quite important. The other thing at the bottom there is quiet time wasters. So sending investors long emails, generic outreach messages, asking for feedback, and sending one massive metric or one massive paragraph. It's not easy on the eyes for an investor. An investor wants to just look at an email, scan for the main traction bullet points, and then make a quick decision on whether they want to continue that conversation with you. So we just talked about investor outreach and some of the strategies that you can use to elicit the interest of an investor. But before that, maybe you want to set up something called a fundraising command center or like an investor CRM. Essentially, the place where you track the conversations that you have with investors and also just a list of investors that you would reach out to. So this is a good way to just track the conversations that you have with each investor and decide who you want to reach out to. So in the Investor CRM, I've just added here some must-haves. So for example, you want the name of the firm and the partner, and it's very important that you target partners of these firms because they are the ones that make decisions. It's not to say that you can't target the analysts or the associates or the principals of the firm, but just know that you need to get their buy-in to get to the stage where you're having a meeting with a partner who is the core decision maker. You want to have a status or stage field in your Investor CRM. That's so that you can keep track of what type of conversation you're having with them. Is it the first conversation? Is it the second conversation? Are they in due diligence? And then you also want some other fields like the last time you had a conversation with them, and then any notes that you had based on your previous conversations with them or something that you've learned. So in this Investor CRM, every active investor must have next action. For example, you don't want to have a list of dead investors in the CRM. It should only be ones that you're either about to reach out to, actively reaching out to, or ones that have already said no to you. I've added in here some investor updates, like a simple format for an investor update, which is very, very similar to the actual initial outreach template that I had mentioned before, where it's a headline, which shows what's changed in your business, 3 to 4 metrics of your choosing, but they should be very important ones that are key to your business, some wins that you've had, but also some asks at the end. Again, always ending with the ask. So this is just a basic investor CRM, and this is what I recommend anyone have in the investor CRM so that they can keep track of investors more closely and have a system for it. Right now, I'm just teaching you guys and showing you guys what's included, but I'm actually going to run through a template at the end. So just keep in mind that that's coming. All right. The next thing that you have is you've had the meeting with the investor. Maybe you've had 2 meetings with the investor. By that time, maybe one of the partners or analysts has said, okay, now we want access to your data room. Could you please give us a look at your data room? Sure. What is a data room? A data room is a place for you to keep all of your company information, contracts, company and corporation documents, financial models, go-to-market strategies, TAM analysis, anything to do with your business and how it runs should be in the data room so that the investors can go into that data room and have a look and fact check whether your company is doing the things that you are saying it is doing. But the secondary goal of a data room is to actually make it super duper easy for an investor to navigate that so that it doesn't actually slow down the round. Some of the issues that I've seen with investor data rooms is that it doesn't bring clarity to the investor. So it could be just a messy dump of files. That doesn't really bring clarity to an investor when they're combing through this. It doesn't provide an evidence of traction. So What types of metrics or documents are you sharing in that data room to point to the investor that you're going to the right direction or that you're achieving product market fit? Maybe an investor wants to see a coherent plan, like a roadmap for the next 12 to 8 months, or at least they want to be able to see what are the milestones that you're planning to hit with the capital that you're going to raise from this round. For example, we are raising $2 million to get to $1 million in ARR in the next 12 months. That's a very tangible thing to say when you're raising capital, rather than we're raising $2 million to hire engineers to build this MVP. You should always tie the capital raise and the amount of the capital raise to the outcome or the milestones that you can achieve with that capital. You want clean, consistent documents as well. So you want them to be well named in your data room so that it's super easy to navigate. I can't mention that and emphasize that enough, is that it has to be easy to navigate. Some inclusions of a data room could be these types of folders: a company folder, product folder, go-to-market, financials, and legal. And within those, you can share your cap table, your organizational chart. I think that one's a little bit less so, for the simple fact that if you're like a two-person startup, the organizational chart is you two founders. Some key shareholder documents like the company constitution, company incorporation docs, shareholders agreements. In terms of your product, if you don't have a fully fledged product yet, you can show the wireframes on Figma. If you do have like a demo, you can embed a Loom video into your data room. You can also show the roadmap of where you're going, what features that you're going to build. All of this is information that an investor is going to absorb so that they can get a better understanding of your product and your company. I would also actually add in this product folder some either quantitative or qualitative data from prospects and customers. So what are customers actually saying about this product? Is there any evidence to show that they really love it, in addition to obviously paying money for your product? Go to market, talking about your ICP, where you're focused on, pricing, funnel metrics, all that stuff, and then just the normal stuff that you need in the financials, which is maybe a financial forecast, how much runway you have, or how much money the capital that you're going to raise is going to give you in terms of runway. For example, we're raising $2 million, and then that will give us 18 months of runway. And then just some other legal contracts like IP assignments and whatnot. So those are the main core fundamentals of what you need in a data room. All right, number 4 is the mechanics of momentum. So this is really important because what can happen in a capital raise, and what I've seen is, okay, you pick maybe the 1st of April, April Fools, to start your capital raise. You start reaching out to investors, but then what happens is that you have conversations with investors in different times, in different weeks. So then maybe you could have a call with an investor the first week, call with an investor in week 3 or the next month, and they're not on the same timeline as you. And that can really, really expand the timeline, and you end up having to close the round or at least raise capital for 6 months instead of 3 months because you're talking to investors at different times. So what I mean by compressing the timeline and also building momentum is that you should book all your meetings in a 7 to 10 day window. And I mean all your meetings with investors. So when you reach out to an investor, don't immediately book the time that they offer. You should send emails to a bunch of VCs and book all of the meetings in 1 week. And that helps you bang out all of the meetings in 1 week, but it also compresses everything into that week so that you're not spreading it across multiple weeks. That also helps you because not only are you pitching investors, but you're also running your own business at the same time. So that helps gatekeep your time so that you can have one sole week for just investor meetings, and then the other weeks you focus on building a product and selling the product. You also want to give these investors consistent updates on a weekly basis. you want to provide real deadlines. So, for example, telling investors that you want to close by this date 3 months into the future, and then holding all of the investors that you're talking to accountable to that deadline, so that if they don't make a decision by that deadline, then you've ruled them out. And then finally, using social proof. So you can talk to them and mention that you are talking to other investors. I'm not saying that you lie and artificially say that you've gauged interest and you actually have real interest from other investors, but just sharing that you're talking with other people is a good signal for them to know that they should be on your timeline. And finally, once you get term sheets after an investor has done 2 to 3 meetings with you, has gone through your due diligence, has gone back and forth with you around what what is in your data room and any follow-up questions that they have, they're comfortable offering you a term sheet. If you have multiple term sheets, that's awesome. But these are the things that you should compare in addition to just the valuation that you're getting, which is the ownership, so how much you're giving away, any board control, so do they actually want a seat at the board, which kind of changes the whole power dynamic that you have in your business, especially if one investor has a board seat. Liquidation preferences is a very big one. The standard is 1 times liquidation. So if an investor puts in $500,000, that means that in the event of a liquidity event or an exit, so when you sell your company, they are privy to that $500,000 back. Anything over a 1 times means that, say, a 2 times liquidation preference, that means if they put in $500,000, that they are owed $1 million at the point of exit. So that's really important to look for when you're looking at your term sheet clauses. Pro rata just means that they're right to invest more capital into your business. And then speed to close. For example, is an investor really ready to sign the term sheet and give you money straight away? Or do they need to take 2 months to actually sign it? Because that can, again, expand your timeline to the point where you're just not knowing and not understanding whether the investor is actually interested in you or not. All right. So we've talked about all of those 4 things. What I have actually built for you guys is 4 different templates based on those 4 things. So right here we have a template for investor outreach, a template for the Investor CRM, a data room template, and also a building momentum template. Let me actually go through these with you. So what I just did there is I've built that entire slide deck in Notion. And so I've made this a public page, which I'll share at the end. But as you can see, this is all built in Notion. And here I'm going to open up one of these templates for you guys to have a look at. So let's have a look at the investor outreach template. So this is kind of your target list that you're reaching out to, and a cold email template that you can use. So see, we use the 4-line structure that I talked about before. And here are some subject line ideas that you can use in your cold email. All of this is assuming that you actually go through a cold email channel, so literally reaching out to an investor cold. But as always, I always recommend you go through a warm channel. So get referred in or get introduced to that investor, as the likelihood of getting a response is significantly higher, especially if it's a referral from someone that that investor trusts. But if you can't do that, then this is a structure that I would recommend. I'd even recommend this if you get a warm intro in, just to give people a very, very high level summary and a very succinct summary as to you and your business and what the call to action is, which is wanting to have a call or a meeting with the investor. I give you a template on the follow-up sequence and then some rules around when to actually stop emailing that investor. If we go back, I'm actually going to build something for you guys now. So I gave you guys a fundraising CRM here, which is kind of the outcome is a clean pipeline that prevents you from drop balls, so missing out on investor communication, and then keeping your momentum. So these are the recommended fields that I would say to add into your Investor CRM. You can see it even has investor update templates here. But what I've actually added in here and what Notion is really good at is just creating something out of nothing. So you can see here that I've created an example prompt. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. It essentially is a prompt that says create an investor database. So if you guys don't know what Notion actually is, and you're thinking, what the hell is this page? How did you create this page? You can think of Notion as this connected AI workspace where you can get stuff done, whether it's just note taking, whether it's creating a project management tool, whether it's using different AI features from within Notion. This will give you a good example that will tailor to your use case of raising capital, where I have Notion AI here in the corner. I've called mine the bro, because in New Zealand, everyone calls each other bro. But what I can do is I can open this up and I can copy and paste that prompt. Or you can just type in the prompt yourself in natural language here. But what I've said is you're a Notion systems designer, convert all the content onto this page into an investor CRM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click enter and it's going to start building that CRM for you from scratch on this page. And while we wait for that to start building, because it does take a while and it was a pretty long prompt, let's go back and have a look at the other templates. So we have the fundraising CRM that's getting built now, a data rooms here, template here. What you can do is you can build a data room. I've given you some folder structures, some naming conventions, and some diligence FAQs. I think one important thing with your data room is to always add in an FAQ into the data room. So these are the frequently asked questions that you know investors are going to ask you or have asked you in the past. And it's good to have this FAQ in there because then it answers the questions for investors without you having to answer them, or for it answers them before they even have to ask you that question. The cool thing is you can make this data room into this living public file that you can share with the investor. The cool thing with Notion is that you can share this with investor if you truly want to, and you can also make this a public page. But say you share this page with an investor and give them view access. What you can do is then you can track analytics of this page. You just go to the three dots here, go to updates and analytics. Say if you shared this with an investor, you would be able to see how long this investor has spent on this page, which gives you a lot of good information and insights as to whether this investor is actually interested in your business. Because the less time that they spend in your data room, the more likely is they don't actually give a crap about your business, or they don't care enough to actually do more research. Whereas if you see an investor go into this data room and they're spending a long time on each page, that's a good sign that they're interested. So if we go back to the Investor CRM, let's have a look at what Notion Agent has built. There we go. Looks like it's created an Investor CRM. Let's have a look. There we are. So with a single prompt, it's created the skeleton of Investor CRM, where it's given us different pages. So maybe we're talking with, I don't know, January capital. It's giving us different fields that we can put in. It's given us different views, so a Kanban board view, so we can track and move them along the different stages. Active investors, ones that have already said no. And that was just done with a single prompt. All right, let's go back. The cool thing is, well, is that Notion's AI has access to the web. So if I wanted to populate it with real world data, I can do that. Actually, I will show you. So you can open up this database, and maybe I want it to populate it with real world data. So I can just type in the chat, populate this database with real investor data from Singaporean investors, Singapore-based investors. Okay. So let's do that, and it should start finding the investors online. As you can see, it's searching for VC's data on the web. And the way that you can toggle this is in your settings here. You can choose to give Notion AI web access, but you can also choose Notion to connect to all of your other tools as well. But that's past the scope of this conversation. I'm happy to showcase this later on once we get some questions in the chat as well. But I really wanted to showcase some of these bare bone templates that you can build on Notion. All right, so here's an example of you just doing a single prompt, and then it's just filled in your investor list with real world data on different investors in Singapore. So you can see Antler, Jungle Ventures, Insignia, Monks Hill, Wavemakers, and Vertex, and Golden Gate. These are real world investors. It's populated the firm, it's populated the stage. You can even ask it to grab the website URL if you really want to. And then now you have a really good base to start reaching out to investors, or at least finding the people and doing research on the investors before you even start that outreach. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for now and get to the questions. All right. So if anyone has any questions, please put it in the Q&A box or in the chat. I'm very much happy to answer any questions for you. And also, if you would like me to build any use cases or any specific fundraising tools live, please do let me know.
Alex, for now, we don't have any questions. We'll wait for it. Maybe 2-3 minutes. But I have a question. I am not a founder. I am not looking for an investor, but for all the founders out here, um, uh, if I'm a new founder, I'm starting something new. I don't have an email list or list of people to reach out to. What channel should I use to get these leads or to get people to reach out to them? If you can help in identifying those channels would be great.
Yeah, so investor lists, there are quite a few out there. I would look onto PitchBook and Crunchbase for certain data on investors and VCs. The good thing about VCs is that they always want to be known. They always want to be out there in the market because their whole job is to find great companies to invest in. So they always market themselves as, hey, look at me, I have money to invest, and we want to invest in the best companies. So then always quite easy to find. If you could just, you can either do a simple Google search, you can get Claude or ChatGPT to create you a list. You can do this in Notion if you want, as I showed you before. And these are real world data on VCs. LinkedIn is a good place to look at and find investors as well. There are always these investor lists out there. If you're based in Singapore, there's a lot of VC events that get hosted along the way, and so definitely attend certain events that have VCs. But the best way that I've found is by searching online as to which startups have recently raised capital in your country. And then from there, you reach out to those founders that have actually successfully raised capital, set up a meeting with them, talk to them about your business, and then at the end, ask them if they would be willing to introduce you to the investor that invested in that company. So you're getting a warm intro in. Obviously, they have to be comfortable introducing you first, and so that's the whole point of reaching out to these startups and building that relationship, because then you get a warm intro in. So that's an example of places that you can find investors. All right, let's have a look. Vishnu asked,
Yeah.
yeah, we are building a co-development platform for early stage home planning. Spoke to 3 architectural firms and they're ready for pilot test. The answer, Vishnu, is there's no real ideal number of pilots. Uh, could I ask you a follow-up question, which is this so that you can present this number to investors? So, like, for example, we have 3 pilot tests that we're doing right now. Is that enough for a VC to be interested? Because I think the answer is it depends on the investor. So, for example, if these 3 architectural firms are ready for a pilot and are willing to pay you for the pilot, in my view, that's enough of a signal of interest from customers for me to take a meeting and learn about your business. But again, it depends on the investor. So if this investor is focused on the early stage or pre-seed or investing in a company that's pre-revenue, then they're willing to take that meeting. But if you take the same proposition or the same outreach method and pitch a Series A investor, they're probably not going to take that meeting because they need you to be post revenue. They probably need you to be over $1 million in revenue per year for them to even take a meeting with you. So my answer would be it depends. All right. Please keep the questions coming in. Otherwise, I might start building something live for you guys, like a proper investor CRM. Actually, let me touch on one thing right here. So I'm going to share screens again and go back to the investor CRM. All right. So we're back in the investor CRM. As you can see, I populated a bunch of information. I actually don't like where that is right now. I'll put that over here. And I'll put the targeted ones over here. Cool thing with Notion is that everything is adjustable and malleable, because Notion is built upon this like Lego block philosophy. So everything is a block, so you can move it along. But I'll give you an example. Say you target Antler. All right, I want to target Antler. And then you start booking a meeting. Oh, cool. Antler wants to talk to me. And you want to actually record the conversation that you have with Antler or that specific person at Antler. I'm assuming that you guys have used tools like Fireflies, like Granola, like Fathom, for example. There's quite a few tools that record meeting notes. But did you know that Notion also has that inbuilt? So what I can do is I can just do / AI meeting notes. And I'm able to record meeting notes from within this one Notion block so that you can have your meeting notes from this one investor right here, which is super awesome. But say you have multiple meetings with that investor in multiple stages, what I'd do is I'd actually create a little database here, which is just a term for an advanced table in Notion. And I can say create a meetings database for meetings with different VCs, with this investor. And Notion again will create this use case or this database for me in this particular page. So while that's building, I have some questions. Caroline, how long would typically take a roadshow, like an investor roadshow? Again, it depends, but you probably want to have it as quick as possible so that you are closing capital quickly so that you can then focus on the business. However, it depends on your stage of company, how much capital that you're raising. So if you're raising a lot of money, like 5 million plus, it may take more. But it could just as well take the same amount of time to raise $1 million from investors. But again, having a good system in place before you even kickstart the roadshow, that's why it's so important, because then you have everything prepared. You have the data room prepared. You have all of your outreach messages prepared. You have investor updates prepared. You have a complete list of all the investors that you're going to reach out to. And then that just makes it so much easier and smoother for you during that roadshow so that you can close them quickly. Of course, Vishnu, I'm happy to share that. All right. How do you know when is the right time to start raising funds? It's a good question, Gaurav. It's not necessarily when you need the capital, but the best time to raise capital is when you actually don't need to raise capital, when you have sufficient, I guess, proof points and traction that people actually want your service or the product that you're offering. Maybe you're generating revenue, and or you've hit a bottleneck. Say you've bootstrapped for a certain amount of time, and now so many people want your product to the point where your team is struggling to keep up with the demand, and your team is struggling to even build the product and features to keep up with the sheer amount of people that want to pay for it, which is a very good problem to have. That is a great time to raise capital. Some people say that you want to raise capital slightly beforehand, but it's really hard to tell. Where I would say that you shouldn't raise capital is when you don't feel like people actually want this thing, or you feel like you need capital to actually build the product. I would say that is wrong. You can test. Like nowadays, it's so easy to build a product using the latest AI tools that, or even just talking to customers with a Figma wireframe. Nowadays, you should always test first before you raise capital. So there's no real right time to raise capital. You kind of feel like you would have the best judgment for your own business as to when that time will be, but always have it under the excuse that people are actually either paying for your product or really, really wanting to pay for your product, but you just can't service them at this point in time. All right. So you guys have seen that I've created an investor meetings database. So maybe I can say, let's zoom up so you can actually see. Antler meeting 1. So now if I'm speaking with Antler, I can add AI meeting notes to this one. Meeting Antler number 1. There we go. Then every time I have a meeting with Antler, I can just add a new meeting notes row. And again, add in all of my meetings with Antler. So what's good about this is that all of your meeting notes with this one investor is all in one place so that you can reference later and that you can review, because once all of the meeting notes are finished, like any other tool, it will give you the transcript, and it will also give you the summary of what you just spoke about and the action items, so that everything is in this one row, so then you can refer to it later. So you guys wanted the Investor CRM. Let me publish that and then send it to you. All right. Here you go. So what I just did there is I just made that Notion page public that I can share with you guys. What I will also share is the slides that I just showcased today as well. There you are. I don't know why the domain is gorgeous cattle, but that's just what Notion does. It just generates funny domains for you. But you can customize it to your own domain, of course. So yeah, happy to answer any questions now. I know we're 45 minutes into the session, so I wanted to leave the last 15 minutes for me to actually build a use case for you guys, whether it's fundraising related or not fundraising related. I could even build a pitch deck in Notion for you to show you guys. Um, you guys just let me know what you want me to build in Notion and I can build it for you, or just answer any fundraising related questions that you have. Take a little bit of a moment. There we are. Let me touch on one thing, because a lot of people do get this wrong, which is the data room sometimes. What I'll do is I'll actually structure the data room properly for you guys. There we go. All right. So this is the data room page that I shared before, where it just shows, the base level of the data room. Again, what I can do is use a Notion prompt and just say, let's create a new chat based on the content in this page, create a data room with folder structures in Notion pages. There we are. I just use my voice AI called Whisperflow to dictate my voice and then write that prompt for me. There we go. And so as you can see here, it's created different folders and pages for me to then add that content in. So maybe I can put in go-to-market stuff there. I can embed files into this as well. So if I have like a PDF of my go-to-market strategy, I can embed this, or I can link it. If I have Figma wireframes, I can embed that. If I have Loom videos or even YouTube videos, I can embed these videos into this page as well. So it looks nice and clean for an investor to just go in, have a look at all of the structures of this data room, and then read it and come back to you with different questions. All right.
Alex, I don't think so. There are questions. But you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that you can also showcase how to make the pitch deck. So maybe people would want to know that as well.
Yeah, sure. Could you give me an example of a startup? It could be a very fictional startup, but this can give me a good base as to how to build a pitch deck. So just give me a random startup idea or a startup company that you think of.
Um, so is Indian companies fine?
Yeah, yeah. Any company.
Okay. So maybe Swiggy or Zomato.
Oh, Vishnu. Vishnu said, "Can you build mine?" Sure. Why not? Why not? Are we able to, Vishnu? Are you able to talk to us about what your business does and whatnot? You can either type it or speak or turn into a panelist and we can have a chat. Okay. Yep. This would be interesting. I'd like to see what your business is. But yeah, any type of company really. All right, we have a question. Do you think funding will be affected with the current war? Hmm. Um, I do think funding is swaying into the direction of that it's more likely you'll get funded if you're an AI company, which kind of is a bad thing, mainly a bad thing because I think investors love to invest in cycles and hype. I mean, you used to be investor, right? It used to be Web3, or it used to be B2B SaaS, then it was Web3, and now it's AI. I think investors love investing in like the next crazy thing. I don't think that funding will be affected depending on where you're raising capital from. For example, in Australia and New Zealand, the funding market is actually quite strong, and startups have raised collectively over $1 billion in Australia alone. In the US, it's happened quite a lot, and funding may be directed into different types of companies rather than funding there being a funding shortage. All of the funding is just being directed into different companies. In some cases, funding is going to more of the defense companies because of the war, which may be a good thing or a bad thing depending on which side you're on. Um, on the post-COVID side, I haven't seen funding depleted. There's always going to be funding out there. You just need to kind of see where to look. And if you can't find funding in your local region or country, then you have to look elsewhere, unfortunately. In New Zealand, it's a bit desolate. There's like 10 venture capital firms in the entire country. So if you can't get funding from them, then you actually have to look outside the country. All right, Vishnu. So Vishnu's business, early stage home planning. Okay. Deals closing. Awesome. So what I'm going to do there, Vishnu, the New Zealand startup ecosystem it's okay. It's okay. Like there's not many investors, but there are some pretty standout companies, but there's just not many standout companies. I would say that there's very little quantity, but in some cases quite high quality. Some companies that have come out of New Zealand, for example, are Allbirds, which is the shoe brand, which is actually not doing well in the stock market right now. Rocket Lab, and actually my favorite New Zealand success story is Grinding Gear Games, which is the game studio that made the famous game Path of Exile. So there are some gems in there, but it is a small country, so with not much funding. All right, what I'm going to do, Vishnu, is I'm going to copy what you just wrote, and I'm going to build this into a pitch deck. So as you can see, this is the same page. What I've done is I've just created a pitch deck page. To create a page, you just do /page, like so, and then you just create one here. But I created a pitch deck. Maybe I'm going to call it whatever your business is. All right. So what I am going to do again is create a new chat and go create this below company blurb into a pitch deck on this page to pitch investors. And then I will paste in what you just wrote, Vishnu. And let's see what it comes up with. So I just press enter, and now it's going to update this page. And this is a pitch deck on Notion itself. Okay, let's have a look. All right, let's talk about the problem, the insight, your solution, why now, what it enables, key value proposition, who's it for, the outcome, the ask. So obviously you can be a bit more specific and you can make this more visual. So let's be like, make this pitch deck more visual so that it's easier on the eye and more beautiful. Let's see what it does. So it's going to update and make it more visual, maybe add in some emojis. I'm not too sure, but you're actually able to then share this. There we are. So it's updated so that it makes it a bit more visually appealing. It's added tables, different like headlines. You can turn this page into a pitch deck by pressing these three dots and then pressing present, like so, which is super cool if you need a lightweight way of creating a pitch deck for investors. But this is just an example of something that you can just whip up really quickly in Notion. I wouldn't say it's the most visually appealing, if I'm being totally honest. There are other types of companies and tools out there that can create pitch decks for you. For example, my favorites are Chronicle, Pitch.com, or Gamma app, where you can start with a prompt and then it can actually create beautifully designed pitch deck presentations for you. But if you need something like super quick, or at least building kind of the foundations or the basics of your pitch deck, and then taking all of this content and then copy and pasting it into these other apps, you can also do that as well. So yeah, that's everything. Hopefully that helps, Vishnu. And again, that link that I sent, the second link in the chat, um, you can go and have a look at that pitch deck as well, because the page is public and everyone else can have a look at it as well. Perfect. And with that, I'm good to go. Yes, totally, Vishnu. You can take it, copy and paste it into. Yeah, I would definitely recommend Chronicle. Um, they're a cool company, cool startup that we work with that also happens to use Notion as well. But you're actually able to copy that Notion link of the template and then paste it into Chronicle, and it'll turn all of your content into a cool presentation as well. So I recommend it. Actually, I'll send it to you guys right here. Not sponsored by them in any way. I just like the founder. Um, Chronicle. There we are. There we are, guys. And also, um, whilst I do that, I'll also send you guys a link. If you guys do want to use Notion for free for 6 months, I mean, the base the base plan is free for just eternity if you just want to use Notion for free. But in terms of using those AI features that I showed you, or connecting it with all of your other tools like Slack or Gmail or Calendar, or even using the Notion Agents feature, then that requires a business plan. But I've given you guys the link here so that you guys can get 6 months of Notion's business plan for free through our partnership with Doers Circle. So enjoy.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing the insights today and also for walking us through such great live examples. I hope this would be very useful for the participants here. And thank you everyone for joining us today and hope you found this session useful. And we'll see you again in the next 0 to 1 event. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Bye.